It is 11 p.m. in Los Angeles, 11 a.m. in Sochi, and 4 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Kim Hyun-ji, and this is ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. The two Koreas are holding a fresh round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort. On the second day of the event on Monday, the family members had 3 chances to meet. Individual meetings in the morning, a group luncheon, and a group meeting in the afternoon. The group meeting is scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. Korea time, which is right about now, and it'll continue for about 2 hours. This new round of reunions is much larger in scale than the first, involving nearly 500 divided family members from both sides of the border. The families will hold a final meeting on Tuesday morning for an hour before they say goodbye. There are an estimated 100,000 Korean American families in the U.S. with ties to North Korea. And with the current round of reunions, many have been left wondering if they will ever get the chance to reunite. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye sat down with some of the separated families outside the divided nation.
There was a ray of hope for 88-year-old Kim Bong-geun when the two Koreas agreed to proceed with reunions for families separated since the Korean War earlier this month. More than 60 years have passed since Kim last saw his sister, brother-in-law, and cousin, who was in kindergarten when he fled North Korea.
I missed him so much. I can still clearly remember my cousin's face. She used to follow me and hold my hand when I walked her to kindergarten.
His faint hope, however, quickly flickered out. Including Kim, an estimated 100,000 Korean American families have ties to North Korea, but this time only 170 families from the two Koreas were allowed to meet their long-lost relatives. Many of the separated Korean American families live in Southern California, which has the largest population of Koreans outside of the divided peninsula. For them, Cha Chang-jun, a member of the National Unification Advisory Council of Los Angeles, says there's not much hope for a reunion anytime soon.
There are hundreds of thousands of separated families in South Korea, and just for them to take a trip to the north to meet their families will take decades. I don't think people like me in the United States will have a chance.
Although Korean Americans are able to take a private trip to the north to meet their families using their U.S. citizenship, not many consider it a feasible option.
There are organizations that help Korean Americans visit North Korea to meet their families, but it costs a lot of money.
People in the Korean American community that have families in the north are hoping that the reunions led by the two Koreas take place on a regular basis and on a larger scale. Pyongyang, however, has a record of unilaterally calling off scheduled family reunions whenever it has a bone to pick with South Korea and the U.S.
I am now almost 90 years old. I don't have many days left. I really hope to see my family before I die.
Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News, Los Angeles.
South Korea and the U.S. have kicked off their annual military exercises, despite objections from North Korea that the drills are an obstacle to warming inter-Korean ties that have gotten a boost from landmark reunions for families separated by the Korean War. But this year's drills are somewhat smaller than they were in the past, in a nod to the recent progress in inter-Korean relations. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Over 5,000 U.S. military personnel are taking part in this year's joint South Korea-U.S. military exercise, Key Resolve. Key Resolve, which runs from this Monday to March 6th, is a defensive computer-simulated drill that aims at enhanced command and control of all units around the nation in a wartime scenario.
As we said in our official announcement, Korea-U.S. will start its Key Resolve and full legal exercise as planned on February 24th.
For the first time, this year's exercise includes training to counter all stages, from preparation to launch, of Pyongyang's weapons of mass destruction, as part of the Allies' deterrence strategy. 7,500 U.S. troops are taking part in a series of joint and combined field training exercises dubbed Full Eagle, which also start Monday and run through April 18th. Last year's exercises involved 10,000 U.S. troops. U.S. aircraft carriers and stealth bombers that were used in 2013 have been left out this time to avoid provoking North Korea. Pyongyang has remained comparatively quiet about this year's exercises, choosing to refrain from threatening to attack the South, as it has done in previous years. Keeping the steadily improving progress in the inter-Korean relations in mind, South Korea's military has said it will not heavily promote the drills, nor will it engage in any other acts that could anger its northern neighbor. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
The South Korean government has proposed a round of working-level talks with North Korea on the prevention and eradication of an outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease. A South Korean government official said the proposal was sent through the Inter-Korean channel at the border village of Panmunjom on Monday, adding that the South would decide on an aid package after talks with the North. Pyongyang confirmed last week an outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease at a pig farm in a city suburb. The disease has since spread, infecting about 3,200 animals. Back in 2007, the South sent $2.4 million worth of medicine and medical devices to the North to quell an outbreak of the disease. The Korean government launched a protest against Japan's renewed claims to Korea's Dokdo Island over the weekend. Seoul's foreign ministry is accusing Tokyo of rationalizing its imperialistic history. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
Korea's foreign ministry summoned Hisashi Mishikami, a senior minister at Japan's embassy in Seoul on Sunday, to protest Tokyo's recent move to advance its territorial claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. Korea is up in arms over a Japanese official's attendance at a ceremony on Saturday that claims Dokdo, which Japan calls Takeshima, is Japanese territory. A vice minister attended the ceremony held in Shimane Prefecture to celebrate Takeshima Day on February 22nd to reassert Tokyo's claim. Seoul has repeatedly said that having government officials participate in the event would seriously impact Korea-Japan relations, as Dokdo is Korean territory and is under Korean jurisdiction. To counter Tokyo's move, Seoul's foreign ministry released a video promoting Korea's sovereignty over Dokdo on its website and YouTube this weekend. The website also includes a link to an animated film about Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. The ministry plans to bring the so-called Comfort Women issue to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva next month. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
The Crown Prince of Japan has voiced his opposition to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's push to revise the country's pacifist constitution. Crown Prince Naruhito made the remarks just prior to his 54th birthday on Sunday. He said he respects the country's peace constitution, which he said has played a vital role in maintaining the peace and prosperity of the country. Abe is pushing to revise the constitution to support the country's self-defense forces, a move viewed by Korea and China as an attempt to revive Japan's imperial past. In the U.S. state of Virginia, where there is a large Korean-American community, the so-called East Sea movement regarding the naming of the body of water between Korea and Japan in school textbooks has produced some tangible results. But will this sentiment travel across the country to the western state of California, where there is also a large population of Korean Americans? Well, our Na Yeon-kyung reports from Los Angeles.
The U.S. state of California, home to the largest population of Korean Americans and Japanese Americans in the country. Some may see this as the next ground for a political battle over how to refer to the body of water between Korea and Japan in school textbooks. Virginia State will soon require the Korean preferred title of East Sea to be used alongside the Sea of Japan in its textbooks, while in New York a similar bill has also been proposed. But the issue has not stirred up much attention yet in California.
저희들은 LA에서는 먼저 소녀상을 지키는 데에 대해서
The president of the Korean American Federation in Los Angeles says the greater LA area has been and still is busy trying to protect the so-called Comfort Women Memorial statue in Glendale Central Park from being
하다 보니까
removed.
일본에서는 굉장히 이 반응이 나쁜
So
거죠.
right now is not the most suitable time to raise another issue and divert attention, whether it be the East Sea bill or anything else.
동해 변기도 더 나가서 이것이 어느 정도의 완성 단계가 되면은
But Pez stresses that if the issue surfaces in the area, the Korean American community will be sure to throw itself behind the movement 100%. Speculation is, though, despite the large Japanese American community, this may not be an issue of great contention within California, much like in Virginia, partially due to the fact that Japan's history of immigration to the U.S. compared to that of Koreans dates much further back.
If there are Japanese Americans speaking about this with the same interest that Korean Americans are speaking about it, it most likely would be what we call Shin Issei, or first generation. My guess is even if you were to speak to Japanese expatriates or students studying here, most of them would not have a strong opinion on what's going on in Virginia.
The variable would rather be how much more proactive Tokyo will be in its opposition to the East Sea movement in California, given its failed attempts to stop the bill from going through in Virginia. But one thing for sure at this point is that the Korean American community will likely rally behind the EC movement if the issue indeed surfaces in California. 나현경, ARIRANG News, Los Angeles.
Back here in the nation, Tuesday marks the first anniversary since President Park Geunhye took office, and recent polls show more than half of Koreans think she's doing a good job. In a survey conducted by research firm Gallup Korea last week, 55% of the respondents gave high marks for President Park's performance over the past 12 months, an approval rating higher than what she received right after her inauguration last February. She has the second highest approval rating among Korean presidents going into their second year in office, following late former President Kim Dae-jung. People gave high marks for her North Korea and security policies, but poor marks for her efforts towards fulfilling her campaign pledges. It's been 1 year since President Park Geunhye took office. Today, we will take a look at what the president has accomplished in her first year on the economic front. In that area, the conservative Park administration has pushed for initiatives aimed at fostering a creative economy, which it says can be achieved through a convergence of the culture and IT industries. For more, we have Dr. Kim Byung-ju, the head of KNLP Consulting and a regular commentator on this program, on the line. Good afternoon, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
The Presidential Office of Cheongwade just released a report on its first-year achievements, and the report ranks the economic upturn as the Park administration's highest achievement. What's your take on that?
Well, I was looking at the report itself, and quite interesting there. First of all, the report claimed that overall economic recovery that seems to be coming on the way is their biggest achievement on the economic front. And the report is saying that, first of all, the growth itself, overall, the cycle itself has been turning up since the second quarter last year. And the fourth quarter, we saw the quarter marking 3.9% growth. So the report, Cheongwade report says it's a clear indication that the economy is almost recovering pretty much. And it credited itself, the Park administration, for proactive fiscal policy, for instance, even though they have had some challenges of passing the supplementary budgets and asking the legislature to come along in the direction that it has been urging. But they said because of this proactive overall macroeconomic policy, the growth is coming. And they say that is the biggest achievement for the Park administration. And the job front, the report also emphasized that the more jobs are being created. For instance, in comparison with the year 2012, as many as 400,000 new jobs, additional jobs have been created last year. And that's because there was a big push and strong government commitment on their side. And also the report mentions even the real estate market itself is coming back, and they said that's because of the result of proactive policies. And on the international side, of course, last year we had a very good year. We had the over $1 trillion trade amount recorded, and the largest ever exports, and also largest ever trade surplus. And so the government, or particularly Cheongwade, was congratulating itself with those kind of achievements.
All right, so it seems like some numbers do support those achievements, but it seems also it's debatable whether they can really congratulate for that success.
Right.
So one of President Park's flagship pledges was economic democratization, which involves promoting fair business practices and reducing the gap between the rich and the poor. And the presidential office claims that it has made considerable progress toward economic democratization as well. Well, is that a fair assessment?
Well, the thing is, the economic democracy itself is a very touchy subject, and President Park, when she was the candidate, she emphasized a lot on that point as well. So they faced the need to show some results. And as you mentioned, the Cheongwade report mentioned that they have made a progress. They are talking about several of the new laws that have been introduced in order to minimize unfair trading practices between and within chaebol groups, and also new laws that came into to prevent abuses of chaebol family in dealing with their chaebol company money. And they said much efforts have been made in order to improve the relationship between chaebol companies on one hand and SMEs on the other. These are all indeed tangible results. But the thing is, the issue itself is such a interesting issue where the success and failure or lack of success can be viewed differently depending on where you're coming from. So I think we need more time for more of a balanced assessment on that front.
All right. Well, on the creative economy front, the Park administration says it has brought about many tangible results. How do you see it?
They were talking about, in that report, they're talking about the overall investment in venture businesses hitting the highest mark since 2001, and also venture funds being formed whose size has doubled since the year 2012 until the end of 2013. And those indeed seem to be quite a tangible number we can talk about there. And they are talking about IT exports and all that. But I think in the Korean media, consensus is that on the creative economy front, still the ideas are not fully finished. And public, they say, Korean media are saying the public are still waiting for some more of the tangible results.
But despite the presidential office's claims, the ruling Saenuri Party says the economy is the area in which the Park administration performed the poorest in its first year. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting point, because it just highlights once again how economy is a difficult issue area. The Cheongwade can claim its success, but interestingly, the ruling party, which is on the side of the president, their lawmakers feel that there is the area there still is a big gap in terms of expectation on one hand and then delivery on the other. Interestingly, it's a Kumgang Sunday report that Kumgang Sunday that has conducted a survey, and out of 155 Saenuri lawmakers, they asked 80 people, and they said, economy is the weakest area, indeed, in terms of achievement for this administration. So it just tells us once again the gap and the chasm between public expectation on one hand and the actual delivery and performance on the other. So I think we need, another 4 years to see exactly how successful this administration will be by then. And in terms of talking about the actual results, I think that will be the point of time we can talk more meaningfully about that.
Right, so it does seem like still the achievement, whether the Park administration achieved or not in the economic front is still debatable.
Right,
what do you think are the key challenges the Park administration has to overcome on the economic front in the remainder of its term if it wants to leave a successful legacy behind?
Right, that's a very important question. And I think one key question is economic democracy. I think the issue itself needs to be redefined. Rather than the issue being talked about the way it was talked about during the campaign, presidential campaign, I think the government should focus more with regard to that issue on the imbalance issues here. We all know that Korean economy is very much imbalanced in the favor of international trade, exports particularly, and the Jebel-driven mechanism here. So one of the key tasks for the administration, the way I see it, is addressing these kind of imbalances, not reducing what's being done well. Korea is doing well export front, and some of the key Jebel companies such as Samsung and Hyundai are doing well. So not discouraging them from doing well at all, but at the same time encouraging the weaker side, domestic side, and the smaller companies, and smaller even among the Jebels, so that they can do better. I think that should be the focus of so-called economic democracy front. And on the job front as well, if we continue to focus on the more of the fundamentals rather than just sticking with the specific numbers of 70% employment ratio or so, I think the administration will get to produce more of the tangible as well as meaningful results down the road.
Right, so we have a lot of challenges and tasks ahead still. Well, thank you, Dr. Kim, for helping us assess President Park Geunhye's first year in office.
Thanks very much.
Ukraine opened a new chapter over the weekend as former parliamentary speaker Alexander Turchinov was made acting president after months of anti-government protests against former leader Viktor Yanukovych. Shin Se-min reports.
Ukraine's new interim president Alexander Turchinov has vowed to chart a course toward European integration now that Russia-backed President Viktor Yanukovych has been ousted. Turchinov also said, however, that Ukraine is willing to build relations with Russia in a new and fair partnership of good neighborly relations. Meanwhile, Parliament has decided to bump up the presidential election by almost a year to the end of May. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled Kiev Saturday, and Turchinov was elected to the presidency in a parliamentary vote. Turchinov is a longtime ally of both the main opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, who was freed from jail Saturday. Her release was one of the conditions of the EU-Ukraine trade pact that Yanukovych walked away from last year in favor of closer ties to Russia. His actions sparked the protests that have had the country up in arms, with more than 100 anti-government protesters having died in the past 2 weeks. The U.S. has said that it is not the interest of Ukraine, Russia, Europe, or the U.S. to see the country split. National Security Advisor Susan Rice warned Russia against sending troops to Ukraine, saying it would be a grave mistake. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
In another news, as the world says thank you to Sochi for hosting a wonderful Winter Olympics, it is also saying good luck or fighting to the next host, the Korean resort town of Pyeongchang. Our Connie Kim has a rundown on the town that has wanted the Olympics so badly for so many years.
Sports fans' eyes were focused on the four genius musicians, including world-famous soprano Jo Soo-mi, as they belted out an ARIRANG medley at the closing ceremony in Sochi. Their performance celebrating the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics whet the appetite of sports fans all over Korea. Some 200 Korean observers have been busily running around Sochi, taking notes on the venues, security, and transportation to get a first-hand look at how the Olympics look and feel when they're in full swing. In 2018, it will have been 30 years since Korea hosted the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul. Korea also becomes just the second Asian country after Japan to host the Winter Olympics. Pyeongchang is located roughly 200 kilometers from the capital Seoul, but with bullet train lines in place, fans and athletes will be able to get to and from Pyeongchang and Seoul in under an hour. The games will be held in 3 locations. Skiing sports and bobsleigh will be held in Pyeongchang and Cheongsan, with skating sports taking place in Gangneung. About 100 medals will be given out to athletes competing in 15 sporting events. Although Korea expects to invest just 1/5 of what Russia poured into the Sochi Olympics, the nation expects to invite athletes from a record amount of countries in 4 years' time. In a bid to create what they're calling New Horizons in Pyeongchang, Korea's organizing committee has expressed hope North Korea will send some athletes and officials to the Games. With plans to complete construction of the venues by 2016, the organizing committee has started getting ready to welcome athletes and sports fans in the best possible way by being ready well ahead of time. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Good afternoon. Right now, we have a lot of fine dust floating into the country from China, and the dust levels are 4 times higher than the normal, and there is a fine dust advisory in effect for central regions. So it's been suggested that children and elderly stay indoors or wear a mask on their way out. Now, for more details, let's move over to our satellite map. We can expect a nice, warm, sunny day across the nation today, but because of the smog, you won't see much of the sun, which will last until Wednesday. Now, going over to our readings, Seoul will top out at 10 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will both peak at 14 degrees respectively. Down onto Jeju Island, it's also going to be mostly sunny day with a high of 13 degrees. Dokdo will get up to 7, while Kumgang tops out at 2. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you.
Well, thank you for that, Michelle. That brings us to the end of this newscast, but stay tuned to ARIRANG. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.